Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us.
Good to be here.
Yep, good to be here. Thank you very much.
So, really, we're just going to start off, and I'm gonna kind of explain what resilient is and how it kind of came about, and then we'll kind of hear your thoughts and what you think that this plan does and how it adds value to the communities that you serve and then the region as a whole. So resilient was part of the EDA's Economic Development Administration's response to COVID. They gave out a sum of money to any economic development districts that wanted to do COVID recovery and resiliency planning. They did this back at the end of 2020. In the middle of 2020, we got awarded a grant to take a real deep dive and a hard look at all the issues kind of facing our 6-county region here in West Central Indiana. We've spent about the last 18 to 20 months researching, chatting with community members, businesses, elected officials, and anyone else who would be willing to chat with us to identify the most pressing needs for long-term economic recovery coming out of COVID, as well as long-term resiliency. So if we face another pandemic of any kind of sorts like this, we will be more resilient to some of these hardships that we faced over the last couple of years, for West Central Indiana. With that, we will now embark on implementation of this plan for the next about 5 or more years, really getting down and working with key community leaders and businesses and elected officials to start addressing all of the things that we identified in this plan. And this plan is jam-packed. It's about 100 pages long, and it's packed full of data. And it has the most up-to-date data, and we'll continue to slowly update that as we go through this plan over the next several years, just to always add new pieces of data in that's going to reflect what current conditions look like. But with all that said, it's a wealth of information, and we encourage anyone and everyone to look at it. You can look at it at thrivewestcentral.com/resilient. You can access the full plan and all the information and data there. So, fellas, I'm kind of curious, in your opinion, I know that this is something that we like to think that it's yesterday's news, but, do you think that your communities are still impacted by COVID today?
Well, I'll go first, Larry. I just, from the perspective of, it's an ongoing battle. It really is. And I think there's still a lot of unknowns about what some of the fallout may be from COVID. We know some things, and there's some things we don't know. I would first start with just the workforce. We've seen a lot of people step out of the workforce for a variety of reasons, a lot of it COVID related, but for a variety of particular issues in their family, whether it's childcare or just not knowing whether kids are going to be in school or not, or, obviously illness. And that's had a direct impact. We've got a lot of available jobs around here, but we've got people who are staying home because of just the way it's affected them personally. Hopefully over time that will change. Another thing that I think is very apparent is the mental health and addiction side of things. I think COVID really pushed a lot of folks, whether they were stressed by money or whether they're going to be able to keep their job or not. All those things are obviously related, or whether, how sick they might be from COVID. All those things have really put a lot of pressure on people as individuals. And we've seen a huge uptick in mental health related calls, and addictions are picking up again. And so those are two specific areas that I would note that are kind of obvious to me, and the things that we deal with in the city of Terre Haute every day. And just trying to figure out, how do we navigate what we've seen and what's hit us, but how do we guide it better in the future to be prepared, as you mentioned earlier, for the next thing that may happen like this. Another, hopefully we won't see something like COVID again in the very near future, but anything that affects the economy and our, West Central Indiana the way it has.
Yeah, God forbid we won't see anything like COVID
I
again
hope
in our
not.
lifetime. But if something like that biological does come around, taking these kind of next steps now in preparation, I think will ease that suffering immensely if and when that ever does come.
Mhm.
I think that one of the things that, COVID has been, hopefully a once in a lifetime thing. I mean, you look at pandemics of the past and you kind of go back to 1917 and, that was a long time ago. That's over 100 years ago. And none of us were alive then. And you think, well, the one thing that's different today is that the world is much more global. And so I think that shows that there is always that possibility we could have some other event. We don't like to think about it, but if there was anything good that came out of COVID was that we actually had to sit back a second and take inventory of what our communities are, what are available in our communities, whether it's healthcare, whether it is amenities. Traveling was pretty much a thing of the past during that time. I mean, the people were having to cancel trips all over the place. And so what they did to offset that was to look at the amenities available in their own communities and look at, what was available nearby. And when you look at education, whether it was the need for broadband and so forth and so on, all those things become very apparent during this time and also I think we were able to see people's responses to a very serious situation. And you learn from the behaviors of people during this time. And I think we learned a lot about that. And one of the great things about the resiliency plan is we were able to take that information and make the changes that we may, or at least propose to make those changes and try to attempt to make those changes that will allow people more access to the amenities that they need and to the healthcare that they need and to the education opportunities they have. And I think that if there's any positive that could come out of COVID is that we realize that we need each other, we need our communities, and we need our local citizens to be able to work together to accomplish a lot of things.
Yeah, I think that's well said, and that's really it's fundamental to all of us and in all of our positions and what we're trying to do and achieve to advance our communities forward. But that kind of togetherness is really what it takes. And we did see that in COVID. We saw that we bonded together here as a regional community, but then even as small local communities, more so than what I think we have for a really long time. And it, made me extremely proud to say that I live in West Central Indiana. And but you're right that it greatly kind of disrupted our lives, and even for the, maybe a surface level selfishness of just how we entertained ourselves. We were used to going outside of our region to go seek entertainment and take trips.
Mhm.
And with COVID, that forced us to find entertainment within our region. More so, just a fun fact here that during COVID, we wanted to see, we noticed that so many people were out and about in the West Central community. They were out doing more nature, more recreational things, because that's something that our region is robust and we're very blessed to have so many natural resources here, that we put some trail counters out just because we wanted to see, we got some new ones. We want to see how people were using some of these amenities here, and they had so much use on them that it made us believe that our equipment was malfunctioning, because on some of our pathways, we were showing on a weekend that we were getting 1,000 to 1,800 folks passing by on a small trail route, and we were like, that can't be right. We've miscalculated this somehow. We don't have this calibrated correctly, and lo and behold, we went back and did it 2 other times, and it came back with roughly the same data, and we're like, okay, well, people really are getting out and about, but when you can't really go travel to Indianapolis or Chicago or, beyond to a beach, and you had to find ways to be close to home, recreation and outdoor living and the amenities we had here were the next best thing. And I think this is ultimately given a lot of people a lot more appreciation for the small communities that they live in here. At least in my humble opinion, I think everybody appreciates the resources that we have here so much more than what they did coming out of COVID, because it was a little bit of a reality check. It was a gut check of, hey, this place isn't so bad, and here's all the great reasons. I just spent the last 2 years really exploring what there is to do in this area. So, if that's one thing.
I think it also reveals some of the weaknesses too, where we do need to improve or areas we do need to improve. And so I think from that aspect, this whole COVID experience, even though it was a devastating thing in many ways, and many of us lost loved ones and different things, there are some things that come out of it that we can make our communities better for the future. And obviously that's what the resiliency plan is all about.
And I would just, add to that, quality of life, quality of places was important before COVID, and it's just as important after, as you do begin to look at what are those amenities do you have, and are they things that I think what we found is there's some things we need to upgrade and improve that we didn't really believe or didn't know there was a lot of that utilization as you described on the trails. It just kind of, our golf courses as an example, we've had 2 record years of revenues because people wanted to get out and golf because of COVID. And that was just not the way that was trending. And so I think it's really made us sit back as the city of Terre Haute and look at a lot of those amenities that we have direct control over to figure out what do we need to do now to prepare ourselves for the future. Obviously prepare for what we need today, but thinking ahead about how those things might be utilized in the future and to help sell our community. So it all goes back to not only being resilient, but how do we really begin to do things beyond what we know we're faced with today. And so I feel really good about the plans we put together. Now there's some implementation time that will kick in, but it fits right in to this resiliency plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So jumping into the resiliency plan a little bit. So that plan is divided up into 4 main pillars. And so one being workforce, the second being healthcare, third being quality of life, and fourth being education. We know that those are the 4 key foundational pillars for all the activities that we love and know here in West Central Indiana. And really what we had a couple pieces in there were a little eyebrow raising when we started gathering the data and really doing deep data dives. But for the most part, I would say a lot of these issues were things that were present here in West Central Indiana prior to COVID, but we were comfortable enough, just kind of getting by with them. But COVID really exacerbated that to the point that it brought it so close to the surface that we couldn't ignore it. And we started looking at those workforce challenges of a lot of people, what happens when you have a little bit of a decline in your population, and then folks take early retirement or they're out on medical leave. And what does that do to your employment workforce? And, even looking at a talent, attraction and retention, and then the housing market. And, it really just put the spotlight on several of these issues. And in a way, it's forced us to really accept them and then start to put that structure in place to say, okay, how are we going to kind of recover out of this and then be long-term, resilient to these kind of issues in the future. So all in all, a lot of good things kind of coming out of what these 4 pillars identified.
Well, one thing I would say about healthcare, we've not been very healthy here in West Central Indiana, and specifically Terre Haute and Vigo County. We've known that. It's part of our community plan to address that. Then you look at the resiliency plan, it's identified again that it's a big issue. We saw that a lot of people that had serious complications and or death from COVID because they had underlying health issues. And so when you kind of just step back from it and think, what is the cost to our employers, and what is the cost to an individual family if somebody gets sick? And it's significant, and it really exposed itself, throughout this COVID the last few years. And so we've got to work harder to get people to, get to the doctor, get those checkups, do those things, be on the right meds to help you manage those health situations. And hopefully they utilize trails and parks and all the amenities in West Central Indiana and all the counties to become healthier, eat better, and exercise. That will then help and prepare us as we move down the road with anything else that might befall us. And so I think that one is a pretty clear area that exposed some of our weaknesses. And then now we have a plan to begin to address that.
Yeah, I think if anything, that's a great example. In what resilient is designed to do is to be that catalyst, is to be the impotence of us being able to start to figure out, how do we partner together with all of our great healthcare organizations? How do we start layering on all the things that we have in our region to start getting them to work together more to address some of these issues? So if anything, Resilient is a great document that's not going to tell you exactly how to solve the problem, but what it's going to do is it's going to give you the data to start using really creative solutions and creative problem solving to form partnerships and initiatives to then start to address these issues. Mayor, you mentioned healthcare, and my next question was, if any of these pillars, which one were you the most passionate about that you really liked? Is healthcare, is that the one you're most passionate about, or do you think that there's another one out of those pillars that you like?
I think they're all important. I just mentioned healthcare because I feel like we're kind of lagging behind on that. We really need to improve the overall health of all of West Central Indiana. But that quality of life, quality of place kind of conversation that goes on every single day and almost everything that I'm involved in, that's a big one. And so we have to find ways to make our area stand out. And so a lot of the things that we're doing, a lot of our planning revolves around that. So, but then education's important. I mean, they're all important, if you start thinking about them, they're all just critical, but it's, in order, you got to have kind of that high level plan for this. As you mentioned, it's not going to solve everything, but it's going to drive us towards developing these specific projects and strategies that will address that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really think that the mayor was correct, when he said, well, healthcare is important, but they're all important. And they all actually, they work together because we need to educate people on why they need to be more active and take the proper healthcare steps. And we need to have the quality of life amenities that allow people to go out and be more active and do more things. And I'm one that, as guilty as anyone, I can get guilty of sitting at my desk and doing the things that I do every day. And then when I get home, I'm tired. Well, I need to go out and take a walk, or, I need to make sure that I'm following through with all my medical, procedures. I need to make sure that I'm eating correctly. And I can be the poster child for that. I need to eat better. And, I think that all of us have through this time, though, realized how all those things work together. How are we educating people to take care of themselves, at a younger age so that they develop those habits throughout their life. I mean, I was an athlete and I was, active when I was in high school, but then you get into workforce and sometimes you get away from those things and you kind of get in a routine. And, we need to build routines that have an active lifestyle as part of it. And I think that we have the community, the amenities available in a community. I think, we know that there are a lot of jobs available in West Central Indiana right now. And when you start thinking about, why are employers having a difficult time finding employees? Well, we're losing a lot of people when they leave because they're going to communities maybe that do have more, availability to things that appeal to them. Maybe that we actually are losing people because our health is not where it needs to be, and so people don't work as long as actively. I mean, all those things fit together. And I think when you start seeing, how the from the education process all the way up through, the amenities, the healthcare, we've got to do something, for example, about broadband availability, because that affects education. It also shows the available. I mean, all the things work together. And I think that we have had to reorganize our priorities in our personal lives from what we've seen. And I personally, with very few exceptions, do not know anyone we lost in COVID that did not have an underlying condition. And a lot of those underlying conditions, and some of the worst were, diabetes and obesity and lung issues, a lot of times to do with smoking or something of that nature. Those are things that we can improve on through education and through the availability of activities and different things, and have, and we can do those in a fun way, enjoy our life. And it's not this terrible, process you have to go through. It's something you can do and enjoy life at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think you both hit the nail on the head that, at least from my point of view, I totally agree. All of these pillars are intertwined. You can't talk about one without talking about another.
Mhm.
And that's very evident just on this short conversation about it. But I love this plan so far because it's really given us a good roadmap to start kind of just one by one attacking each of these issues and starting to make some headway to overcome them. I know one of the business and workforce related issues that we ran into that we found here was for entrepreneurship, and that we don't necessarily have a thriving entrepreneurial environment here in West Central Indiana. And that's been something that from an economic kind of standpoint that we, here at Thrive have been trying to overcome. And so the plan really broke down kind of what are some of the weakness and what are some of the areas of opportunity that we have. One of those areas being access to capital, is that emerging entrepreneurs, do not always have access to traditional funding sources. And so we as Thrive took it upon ourselves with our great board, and we went after and got a USDA revolving loan fund. We aptly named it Spark. And we've just about expended those resources in that funding source, and we'll probably go back for more here later. But that only addressed a part of the issue, because that from USDA. We're only allowed to operate businesses and help them that operate in the rural area. So it left the city of Terre Haute and Vigo County and the swath through Clay County that's in the urbanized area. The businesses that operate within that were a little bit out of luck because they couldn't operate within the bounds of the program. And so again, looking back at the data through the resilient plan, knowing that we need considerable more resources when it comes to access to capital for emerging businesses, we went after EDA for some of the American Rescue Plan funds and put in for an $800,000 request with a $200,000 local community matching on that, for a total of $1 million for a revolving loan fund that can serve the whole entire region, but more so for the urbanized areas, since they don't have as much access to capital. And if I didn't tell you on this, I would be remiss here. But on Friday, we got the good word from EDA that our application was accepted for the EDA revolving loan fund. And we're going to be getting $800,000 here coming into West Central Indiana here later this year to now expand the Spark revolving loan fund, project. So I'm super pleased. You guys are hearing this for the first time. I can see the look on your face, but I just found out just shortly before, and I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you all. But that right there was a direct outcome of the resilient plan, and that kind of illustrates the power that this kind of planning document has to now go and take really actionable steps to overcoming the challenges here that we're facing. And that's just one piece. That's just one piece to supporting that entrepreneurial community, and one piece of the data that that this plan outlined.
Well, just would say one important thing to that is, the vast majority of people work for small businesses. It's like 75, 80%. And so I think COVID has made people kind of reevaluate their lives in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of energy out there, people saying, maybe now's the time I start a business. But you're right, they don't have access to a lot of resources, whether it's financial or just business support resources. We got to feed that, because creating more small businesses is going to lead to more employment opportunities. That improves the quality of life in your community if you have more offerings to people who want to be here. So it all, continues to feed on itself. So that's great news to hear that that's coming. And I think there's more to do in that area, because I love that entrepreneurship part. And I really would like to see us do more in West Central Indiana.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really became, that we all became aware of more so than what we had been, because of some opportunities maybe that we missed, or just the fact that our employers need employees so bad, is we've actually come to realize one of the most pressing issues we have in West Central Indiana is we have a lack of housing, and that we need to ramp up the, whether it's, encouraging contractors or encouraging development for housing. We're short. We need more availability of homes, and that in itself will not only help our employers offset the need for employees, but encourage people to stay, where in the past they may have been encouraged to leave just literally because there was no place to live that fit their needs. And I think that those are some things all throughout this process, as we develop our long-term strategies, and as we develop our need for broadband, for example, in certain areas, and different things, that all those things need to work together and to develop again that need that we have to improve the quality of life for people in West Central Indiana. Something as simple as housing. And it's interesting. It's, as the old saying, if you build it, they will come. Well, in some cases, when it's housing, we've kind of sit around and thought, well, they'll build it, so we'll have a place to live. It's not been happening. If you look at statistics on housing, even nationwide, one of the reasons why we have such high housing prices today is because they haven't been building it. And we have not even kept up with population growth anywhere in America. And if we're going to encourage people to live in West Central Indiana, obviously we have got to address that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that is addressed here in the resiliency plan, that housing is one of our biggest needs, and one of our more immediate needs, and it's not going to solve itself overnight, but we're going to start taking the next steps to start building that, or solving that problem and building upon it. Thrive has kicked off this year their housing study, which will be out later in 2022 here, in the fall, most likely is when we're going to release that. But it was a direct correlation. We saw it in the resilient plan. We said, hey, this is something we need to do. Let's go after and do something that's going to be a catalyst. And and then thinking about, how do we start to form more public-private partnerships, and how do we work with our municipalities and our local governments, and say, okay, if we need more houses, then how do we expand our public infrastructure, where we need more sewer or water or broadband, or all of those things that it takes, that people want to live in good neighborhoods. What does that picture look like? And then how do we start to take the necessary steps to achieve that goal?
And when you consider what you were mentioning about the entrepreneurship, there's another opportunity for an entrepreneur also to step up and say, hey, I can build houses. I can build apartments. I can do, because we need all forms of housing. We're low. And so, and that's what actually made it come to mind when you talk about the entrepreneurship programs and different things that we can do. That's one good place to start, that we know there's a need for. So if there are people out there that have those skills, I think that they should be encouraged to consider, this is an area that we need help.
Yeah, and that ties right back into education. One of the other pillars is, how do we support our education institutions and encourage more access to trades, and doing building trades and teaching kids that skill set that they could go out and have thriving, no pun intended, businesses within the West Central Indiana community, to start meeting some of these needs. I mean, if anything, now is one of the best times, I think, to be an entrepreneur, because there is so much need and so much demand out there within our communities and our society, that if you work hard and you're intelligent and you have a good skill set and you're willing to master your craft, there's a lot of opportunity out there for you to grow a business.
Absolutely. And, it's a bit disappointing when you look at some of our statistics of high school graduates. We're on the low end here in this area. Where are those kids going? How are they getting plugged in? You've got labor unions that are looking for new young apprentices to come in, and college isn't for everybody. We need all these career paths. You've got to have the 2-year college and the 4-year college and beyond, but we've got to get kids graduating from high school and getting plugged into the economy in some way. And so anything we can do to help facilitate opportunities and pathways, I think we all have a role in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I agree with that. And I think success, comes in all shapes and sizes and all forms, and there's a bunch of different ways to be successful within your community. And I love education. I'm a passionate person. I'm a strong believer that education, the more can changes lives, and changes your life for the better. But I also, I'm also a big supporter in young folks really exploring all options and not thinking that they only can go down one path or another. No, there's a bunch of paths that you can go down, and it may be college, it may be going in and learning a trade, it may be doing something totally different, but there's a lot of different options out there for our young folks. And I really encourage them and us as leaders, as adults, members of the community, as mentors to all these young folks, to really take time to talk to all of the ones that are within our sphere of influence and say, you don't just have to do this. There's lots of opportunities out there. And you know what, if you want it, go get it. You can do that. And I think that also helps in the long-term strategy for talent attraction and retention, and keeping our youth here and showing them that West Central Indiana is a really phenomenal place to live and to raise a family and to grow old. I lived, personal story of mine, I lived all around the country. I was very blessed, but I was one of these young folks growing up around here that I was like, I'm out of here. When I'm 18, I'm out and I'm not coming back. There's nothing here for me. And I got to live a variety of different places, out west, down south, up in the north. I mean, and I was very fortunate to see that the grass is not always greener on the other side. And when it came down to what, when I was in my late 20s, and I was wanting to kind of have a little more stability in my life, have a little more structure, coming home to family was great, but then also thinking about how I was going to start a family, this was a great place to grow up. And now that I'm an adult and a professional here, this is a great place just to, run a business or work and live. And I'm going to be thrilled to stay here even through retirement, because this region has everything you could want, and it's just a great place. And I think we have to tell that story. We have to tell that story to our young folks, because they don't always hear that. It's easy to take for granted what we see every day, what we have in front of us, but we have it really good here in West Central Indiana, and we're only making it better. And I think Resilient is just that plan to even do that. It's to help us make it better. Oh,
I think there are a lot of people very motivated this time to be able to see, our region grow and advance. And, I'd encourage people as well as, encourage our young people, mentor people. And there's a lot of talented people in our community. And, so, we have an aging society. We need to replace, people who are going to be retiring or moving on with life, or that aren't going to be with us forever. We need to replace those with people who have the skills to do that. And a lot of times, we need to encourage people to pass along their talents and their abilities. I've always encouraged my kids to find the color of their parachute. And I've got 4 kids, they all do something different. And I think they found the colors of their parachute. They found what they needed to do to be able to enjoy and love life. And not all of them are staying here in our region, but some of them are. A couple of them are. I'm 50-50 on that. But and one of them's a missionary, so you can't hardly blame her for getting outside the community for that, because he's a missionary. But I wanted my kids, with me, and like I said, to encourage people to stay. We all need to be better mentors and help people, see that success can be, yours. You just need to find the color of your parachute.
yeah, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, I have really appreciated this conversation today, and it has gone better than I ever could have expected. And I appreciate your support with Resilient. What final words do you have for our community, our leaders, our business folks, our residents, our citizens, as they look to check out Resilient, to learn more about it and see how they can get involved? What parting words of wisdom do you have for them?
Well, that's an interesting way to work into that. So I guess a couple things strike me. I think there's a lot of positive things going on in West Central Indiana. I'm really proud of some things we've got going here right in Terre Haute and Vigo County. But, it's bigger than all that, because government isn't going to solve all the issues out there. It doesn't work that way. And talking about private businesses, organizations, healthcare, education, all these components, if everybody kind of works together with their ultimate goals being to make this a better place, then we're on the right track. But somebody's got to help facilitate some of these specific strategies. And I think this plan does that. I'm excited about that. I love to see more engagement from people, because that's something that we've lacked around here for a very long time. And over the last 10, 12 years, I've seen a big change of collaboration and efforts to improve our community in all of West Central Indiana. And I think this plan just helps push that along and facilitate that. It makes people say, how can I get involved? How can I benefit from this? And as they're already thinking kind of outside of the box because of what COVID has done to us, there's a great opportunity here for us to be very successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And this plan, as you mentioned, it's for everyone. I mean, it's from the individual citizen to take and embrace and find something they want to champion, to each of our small towns and communities that exist in West Central Indiana, to any of our businesses and education leaders. That way, it's for everyone.
Yep.
And I'd say that the last thing that I would have to say is, help us. If you've got ideas, if you see a need, if you have, if you have something that you really have a burden for, or something you really would like to see, let the people in the leadership and communities know those things. And we can't, it's like the mayor said, the government can't solve all of our problems. Honestly, we can create more problems sometimes than we can solve on the government side. But as a community, though, we can do a lot of awesome things together. And we have to be motivated to do it. We have to have the ideas. We have to have the resources. Whether it's capital is a key. I mean, we're going to have capital to do some of these things that we want to do. And yeah, we're going to, there are some funding sources available from government sources and so forth, but it can't be done all by with government. That's your money. That's taxpayers' dollars. And then you start getting in this, discussion about how much is too much. And so it really needs to be done with private resources and quite honestly, sweat equity. People need to just, we need to work together, rebuild a community that if we ever face something like COVID again, that we're going to have a better available pool of resources that we can all benefit from for the rest of our lives and for the lives of our children and our grandchildren.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. At the end of the day, resilient is our opportunity to really be collaborative and really partner on making West Central Indiana as a whole better. And each individual is going to go after what what incentivizes them and what interests them, and the sum of all of those parts is going to really work together. And I look at this is a great opportunity, and I think if we keep the momentum behind this planning effort and behind future planning efforts and in really being engaging, I think we're headed in the right direction. And within a decade, I think a lot of these things on this plan are going to be outdated, and we're going to say we've accomplished those, and now we're working on completely new challenges, and these are going to be just a pleasant memory in the rearview mirror. So I think we're heading in the right direction, and I think coming out of COVID here, thankfully the planning effort, we were able to do that through EDA, and in the long run, this is going to help make West Central Indiana even better, even a better place to live.
Yep, I agree.
All right, well, thanks, fellas. I really appreciate it, and we'll let you get back to your day. And thanks a lot for coming by.
Thanks,
Thank
Ryan.
you.
All right.